Good morning, everybody. A few days ago, I was in the home of some friends of mine, and the adults are delightful. I love them. They're cool people, but their children. I hung out for 2.5 days with a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. This is in Florida, and the little guy named Elias said there was a crocodile in our backyard, and he pointed out the window. And I looked at his sisters for confirmation, and they both said, yeah, there was a crocodile in our backyard. I looked at the parents for confirmation. They said, yeah, there was a crocodile in our backyard. And then the little guy, the 2-year-old Elias, said, but I got him with a stick. I mean, imagine a 2-year-old telling you he conquered a crocodile in his backyard with a stick. It was the funnest thing that's happened to me in probably a year. Just looking at how dead serious he was. I looked at the sisters and they were like, we don't know if that part happened. There was a crocodile in our backyard, but did he conquer it with a stick? Don't know. I looked at the parents and they said, no. But Elias was dead serious. I conquered it with a stick, 2 years old. And I was just overwhelmed, even though he was lying through his teeth. I looked at him and I said, Elias, I love you. And he said, I love, a lot of O's, I love you. And I said, no, I love you more. And he said, no, I love you more. And I said, I love you to the moon and back. And he looked up as if contemplating the moon. And then he slapped the table in front of him and he said, I love you right down here. Forget the moon. I love you right down here on planet Earth. That little mind was contemplating the basic principle of life. Things have to be brought down to their essence, to their foundation, to their core. I was speaking in exaggerated poetic terms. I love you to the moon and back. But he trumped my exaggerated poetry with his prose. He just said, no. Love, Ty, this is between the lines. Now I'm reading into this. He was essentially saying, no, Ty, no, love isn't some poetic, exaggerated, lofty thing up at the moon. Ty, love is right here, right now, right at this table. I love you right here, right down here, right now. Do we love one another right here, right now, right down here? Is love a big, giant, lofty idea in our minds that is so full of sentiment and emotion and romance that we lose track of the fact that love is very practical? It involves simply doing the right thing in the heat of the moment, in relation to others. That's what love really is. Sometimes love is attended by a feeling. It's nice when it is. But sometimes love is just the practical decision of doing the right thing for the other. Now, I want to talk to you today about the fact that you and I all have a kind of 5-level existence as human beings. This is the kind of thing that when you say it, everybody listening knows that it's true without proof. I don't have to prove this to you, in other words. I don't have to move through any deductive reasoning to persuade you that you have a 5-level life. You just do, and as soon as I say it, you'll just say, oh, yeah, exactly, I have a 5-level life. This is your existence and mine. First of all, there's the individual. That's you, just the you that you are, apart from everybody else. The individual person. Everyone in this room is an individual person. But then individuals come together and they make up what's called the family. And all of us have a family of origin at a bare minimum, and a new family that some of us have started apart from the family of origin. We'll say more about that in a moment. And then there is the church level, the community level. And then there's the nation. All of us have citizenship somewhere on planet Earth with some nation, with some country. And then there's the world at large. This is your 5-level life. This is my 5-level life. Everybody exists within this basic structure of life and existence. Now, when we look at the fact that all of us exist within this kind of structure, the question becomes, how do we operate? How do we navigate these different levels of relationships and life? What do we do? Should we pause to think it through? Should we live a life that actually deliberately, intentionally thinks through the implications of all these aspects of our existence? Well, if we do that, we come up against what I'm going to call this morning, and it's in quote marks because I didn't come up with this terminology. In fact, you could Google this term and you would find that it's a very, very in vogue way of talking right now, especially in business and finance, right? And first principle thinking is what we're going to talk about in relation to these 5 levels of life. What's first principle thinking? Well, first of all, let's just establish the fact that life is governed by principles. That is to say, life is governed by laws. We could expand that a little bit further. Life is governed by principles. Life is governed by laws. What does that mean? Life is governed by cause and effect relationships. Every single thing that ever happens produces a kind of residual effect, or sometimes we say that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every single thing that happens produces a ripple effect. So nothing ever happens in isolation. We don't exist in isolation. Life is governed by principles, by laws, by cause and effect relationships. Which is to say, with the opposite train of thought, that life is not governed by luck, chance, magic, happenstance, or superstition. Every single phenomenon that we ever encounter as human beings has a cause. Something preceded what it is that we're witnessing. Even if that cause, in a given circumstance, happens to be a miraculous cause, an intervention from God. I had the privilege recently of being at an event in Florida, and this man and this woman came up and said hi, and I knew who they were, and they reminded me, hey, 5 years ago, we had an anointing service for me. And the man said, for her, for my wife. She herself was a doctor of a certain kind of cancer, and she got the kind of cancer. She got the very kind of cancer that she is a specialist in. And 5 years ago, they said, hey, could we have special prayer? Could we have an anointing service, right? So I said, yes, let's do that. And there they were, just a couple of weeks ago, they're in Florida saying, the cancer's gone, completely healed. She's a scientist. She's a medical scientist. She's a doctor. She knows that she was on death's door. And whatever it was that was in her body, in this particular case, cancer, it was healed. So we say that's a miraculous occurrence, but the miraculous occurrence itself had a cause. The cause was the intervention of God in that situation, right? So every single thing happens with a cause that generates the effect. Life is governed by principles. Now, this first principles kind of thinking that is very popular now in business and finance traces all the way back to Aristotle. Aristotle is the origin of this idea, and he described first principle thinking with this language. He says that first principles are the first basis from which a thing is known. So anything that you see happening, if you back up far enough from it, you'll see other related events that produced the thing that you're witnessing, right? So it's the first basis from which a thing is known. Okay, now, Scripture talks about this idea of first principle thinking with the words of Solomon in Proverbs. Wisdom, the wise man says, Solomon, King Solomon, wisdom is the principal thing. Another version says the main thing, the primary thing, the foundational thing, the core thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. So what should you do? What logically follows from that premise? If wisdom is the core thing, the foundational thing, the premise of everything else, well, what should you do? Well, you should get some. You should get some wisdom. You should get wisdom. And how enthusiastic should you be about this getting of wisdom? And in all your getting, get understanding. In other words, apply your mind, your life, your heart to the task of getting wisdom, because wisdom is the main thing. If you know what a thing is and how it operates, well, then you know how to respond to it. Here's a definition of wisdom from a biblical perspective. Wisdom seeks to understand the way things really are, not the way I wish they were. Wisdom isn't wringing its hands over an event that I have no control over. Wisdom is saying that happened and it can't unhappen, which is a law of life, right? Anything that happens can't unhappen. If it happened, now you just have to deal with the thing, yes or no? You just, okay, now it's from this point forward. There's no reason to be thinking backwards in this situation, because wisdom seeks to understand the way things are, not the way I wish they would be, and something that I had hoped would happen but it didn't, or something I wished didn't happen but it did. The question is not really ever, why did this happen? But what now? That's the question. Do you hear the difference between those two things? Not why did this happen? That produces anxiety. We've all experienced that, correct? Anxiety is the product of looking backwards, right? Depression, by the way, by definition, is the act of looking forward and borrowing trouble that hasn't happened yet. Most of the things you're afraid will happen will never happen, so chill. There's no reason to worry about it. That's why sometimes I have said that worry is a soft form of atheism. So if I'm worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, I am not believing and trusting that God has my best interests at heart, whatever happens. So wisdom seeks to understand the way things are and how to respond accordingly. A thing happened, it can't unhappen. Not why, but what now? What next? How do I navigate what's in front of me, not continuing to look back at what happened before? So living by principles, laws, or an understanding of cause and effect relationships, living by principles in relation to myself and others generates the best possible outcomes. Now, I've worded this very precisely because you cannot say, this would not be true, that if you live by principles, nothing bad will ever happen to you. You can't say that. Here's what you can say. You can say that living by principles will generate the best possible outcomes given all the other circumstances surrounding your life, right? Because you know and I know that even if you live by principles, there might be somebody adjacent to you, some knucklehead named Bob, for example, or Frank or Judy or Ty. There might be somebody adjacent to you that's not living by principles. Are you tracking with me? Now, you may be doing the right thing in a circumstance, living by principle, and then there's somebody right next to you, just at arm's length, who just did something that is now impacting you. So you can't say with accuracy that if you live by principles, nothing will ever go wrong for you. What you can say is living by principles, living a principle-based life in relation to myself and others, will generate the best possible outcomes, given the fact that there are a bunch of other free wills around you that are doing things that may impact you. But the best possible outcomes, now watch this, living by external demands and emotional dictates generates the worst possible outcomes. Freaking out emotionally and acting from that freaked outness, that's a new word. Acting, making a decision and moving in a direction because of the way you feel in the moment is going to be hazardous. So just as living by principles in relation to myself and others generates the highest likelihood of positive outcomes, if I live by the external demands of others, the expectations of others, what people wish I would do, I always need to back up from the pressures and expectations of others. I need to back up just far enough to say, but what is it that I know I should do in this particular situation? Not what is expected of me from my mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandpa, my auntie, my uncle, my child in a moment of meltdown. People are going to be doing all kinds of things around you, around me all the time. And the highest likelihood of positive outcomes is to live by principle, not by the demands of others or the emotional dictates of the moment. Because the emotional dictates of the moment inevitably is attended by miscalculations and decisions that are not based in wisdom. And what is wisdom again? Wisdom seeks to understand simply the way things are, not how I wish they were, not how they could have been, but what they are. Wisdom seeks to understand that. A thing has happened. It can't now unhappen. What do I do now? That is to say, how do I move forward? How do I navigate what has happened? Now, Albert Einstein comes along and he says, whatever it is that you're encountering, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything on the individual level, on the family level, on the church level, on the national level, on the world level. We're always encountering things on these 5 levels. Doesn't matter what's happening, no problem can be solved from the same consciousness that created it. So if I get myself into a predicament at a level of thinking, I can't get myself out of that predicament at the same level of thinking. What do I need to do then? I need to introduce better thinking into this circumstance that I find myself in. I need to prayerfully seek wisdom from above to understand what is going on here. I need to expand my awareness, my knowledge base, because if I'm in a predicament, I'll never get out of that predicament by thinking at the same level that created it. That's Albert Einstein's complex way of saying this basic truth. Here's my way of saying it. Stupid won't fix stupid. That's easy to remember, right? We can memorize that together today. Let's go ahead and memorize that together today. Let's say it all in unison in this gym together today. All together now. Stupid won't fix stupid. There's no way that a series of stupid decisions producing a set of circumstances can be rectified by continuing the stupid way of thinking. So again, what is the bottom line? I need wisdom. Now I'm going to suggest to you that Scripture teaches that there are 2 first principles or core principles or foundational principles that will serve you and me very well in life. Now it's not to say that there aren't other principles that are logical extensions of these, but here's 2 foundational principles. Look at this. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Let not mercy, there's number one, and truth forsake you. Bind them, mercy and truth, around your neck. This is poetry. This is not literally around your neck. But symbolically, allow your life to be constantly attended by these principles the way a necklace around your neck would be constantly attending you through life. Everywhere you go with something around your neck, whatever's around your neck, is with you. Take mercy and truth everywhere you go. Write them on the tablet of your heart, on the fine inner mechanisms of your thinking and feeling process. Write mercy and truth. These are foundational principles. And so, look at this language, and so find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Do you see the cause and effect relationship that's described here? If I relate to you with mercy and truth, you're going to sense that integrity and reciprocate. You're going to tend to treat me mercifully if I treat you mercifully. You tracking? So there's going to be a direct correlation between the way I treat you and the way you treat me. I will have more favor from my fellow human beings in all the relationships of life if mercy and truth are the governing principles, the foundational principles by which I'm operating. We'll talk more about mercy and truth as we conclude. But these are the first principles that we're talking about. Again, not that there aren't other principles, but these are first principle level thinking. Mercy and truth. So how do we apply first principle thinking to the 5 levels of life: the individual, the family, the church, the nation, and the world? Let's just move through each of these. Here are, for each of these segments, I'm going to give you 5 ways of thinking about each of these 5 categories. Are there 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I think there's 5 for each category. So, first of all, how do I see and relate to myself as an individual? Well, first of all, the first thing I need to say to myself is that the only way to be a truly righteous, good, wonderful, prosperous individual is to not be centered in myself. I'm an individual, and the first thing that comes to mind is I shouldn't be all about me. I should be centered outside of myself in God, in Christ, and by logical extension, in others, right? So the foundational principle that will ruin your life and my life faster than any other principle is the principle of self-centeredness. People smell it. It reeks in the atmosphere of social media, for example. It reeks in the atmosphere of entertainment and pop culture. If you just pause and pay attention, you see narcissism and arrogance and self-centeredness and greed all around us all the time. Yes or no? The only way to be a truly viable individual is to not be fixated on myself. To not be obsessed with myself. To be centered outside of myself in God. This is the first foundation. Now, there are going to be pressures around you and me. You know, you might be a 13-year-old, and some of your friends are making fun of you because you believe in God. You're going to have to back up a step from your friends. If you're an adult and you have family members who don't take seriously your faith, you're going to have to back up from them far enough to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to decide whether I believe or do not believe in God, in Jesus, because of the pressures of the people around me. I need to, as an individual, figure out, what do I believe? Not what do the people around me believe, and what are they dictating? Secondly, as an individual, the the centering outside of myself in God puts in view the source of all integrity and good character. So I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Jesus as a superstition because I'm afraid of what will happen to me when I die. No, scratch that. Regardless of what's going to happen to you or me after I die, after you die, the real value of knowing Jesus is that in Jesus we witness integrity and good character as our reference point for our own lives. Regardless of what happens after this life, what about right here? What did Elias say? Right here, right now, down here. What about down here? Not up there, not way beyond the rainbow's end. Integrity and good character is present in Christ. And so if he's my reference point, I'm going to constantly be called to account by him as my standard. And then as an individual, center myself outside of myself in God, looking continually to Jesus and his example of integrity and good character, I need to continually operate with humility and self-awareness. Because most of what there is to know in all the vast realm of the knowable, all knowledge, most of what there is to know, I don't know. Most of what there is to know, you don't know. We're on balance mostly ignorant. Mostly ignorant. We only know a small little sliver of what there is to know. And so we need to continually hold ourselves in a posture of humility and self-awareness and open to whatever else might be revealed as I navigate through life. I will. If I'm paying attention, I will be learning things continually. The most dangerous person in the world is the person who can't be told anything by anybody else on the planet. They're just always right. And no new information ever moves them in any kind of different direction. This is the most dangerous condition a human being can be in. The best condition to be in is centered outside of myself, looking to God and to Christ for good character and integrity, and then continually holding myself in a posture of humility and self-awareness because I need to know things I don't know right now. And then the individual, this is extremely important. As an individual, you and I need to live a missional life. In other words, you need to figure out, why do you exist? What is it that you can contribute to the larger world around you, to the family, the church, the nation, the world? What are your particular gifts and talents and resources that you can steward? On this level, the Bible is just absolutely astounding when it says, it just sounds better in the Old King James English, and actually it's the only one I have memorized, so I'll just say the Old King James English. I'm sorry for that. All things come of thee, and of thine own we have given thee. Do you hear that? Everything comes from you. Everything good comes from you, so that anytime I ever give anything to you, I'm just giving back to you what you first gave to me, right? It's like my daughter, Leah, when she's 5 years old, buying me a birthday present with the money I gave her, right? And I definitely gave her enough for the thing I wanted. She's not the source of the cash, but she has the joy of giving. You're not the source of your talents and resources. You're a steward over what God has put in your charge, right? Which means that you and I need to live a missional life that is constantly in a frame of mind in which I'm assessing, what do I have from God that can be a blessing to others? Generosity is one of the first principles of life. And only you as an individual can decide for you what kind of person you will be. Not the chattering voices around you, only you. And this means, and this is a personal thing that I want to call to your attention and ask you to consider. Some of you probably already do it. But in order to be a viable individual, you must have time alone. You have to have alone time. If you're constantly under the influence of other voices, you have to pull back. Why? Because you must sometimes pull back from all external influences to recalibrate and figure out, who am I? What kind of person do I choose to be? Not what does my mom want, what does my dad want, not what does my grandma want, what does my grandpa want, not what does anybody, my friends, no. Who and what am I? You have to pull back far enough. You must distinguish between your thoughts and the thoughts of others. I heard a commentator recently say, some people go through their whole life never hearing their own voice. Because every time they open their mouth, they're simply echoing somebody else's opinions, perspectives, and thoughts. Right? When it comes to perspectives, opinions, and thoughts, you and I need to decide, what do I think? What are my perspectives? And again, that's in the context of what? Humility and self-awareness. It doesn't mean that you can't learn anymore. It just means that in this moment, what I know is X. Now, I might know Y tomorrow, or X, Y, or Z in a few days. I might figure something out tomorrow, but right now, I need to be true to who? Myself, my own sense of individuality. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher, emperor of Rome, said, if you are distressed by anything external, certainly you are sometimes, aren't you? If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself. This is a bit much. I kind of wish he hadn't said this, because it just pushes the nerve to a painful level. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of the thing. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Do you understand what this means? It means that at any moment you have the autonomy and the free will to say, preferably in the privacy of your own head, not yelling and shouting in somebody's face who's trying to control you, but in the privacy of your own head, you can say, I now, in this moment, revoke your power over me. This external thing that you've been doing to me for the last week, month, year, I revoke that power. You no longer can dictate what's going to happen in my life. Again, preferably in the privacy of your own mind, and just keep looking at them nodding and smiling. But in your mind, you know that you are an individual and that your choices are yours alone. You have the final say over you. Nobody else does. And the faster you and I learn this and master the art of a legitimate individual detachment from the dictates of others, the moment you and I realize this, the anxiety begins to subside. The expectations that you and I need to be conscious of and desirous of processing are the expectations of God. And by logical extension, my expectations of myself in light of what God has taught me. The individual is sovereign first and foremost in all these relationships, and that leads to the family. Now, it's like when you get on the airplane, and the flight attendant comes over the speaker and says, you know, this isn't exactly how they say it, but if this plane starts to go down, oxygen masks will drop from the compartment above you. And then what do they say? Put yours on first, and then assist others around you. Why? Because if you're dying for want of oxygen, you can't help anybody around you. You need to be healthy in yourself before you can be a source of health for others. And this is why the individual is sovereign. By the way, just a parenthetical statement here. There's rarely been a time in human history where the sovereignty of the individual was understood. We happen to be living in what is sometimes called the American experiment, which has now, over the last 200 years or so, impacted much of the Western world with the same kind of thinking, and that is that no king, no pope, I have a direct relationship with God Almighty myself, and I will think through what I will do. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. Posture again of what? Humility and self-awareness. You can teach me something. I'm listening. But at the end of the day, the individual level of my existence has to have structural integrity, or I can't even be there for the next level, which is my family. I can't be present on the level that my family needs me to be present. Putting the symbolic oxygen mask on their faces when necessary because I'm sufficiently structurally sound in my own character and life that I can pull this off. The family level, again, 5 points. There is what we call the immediate family and the extended family. I'll just make 1 point here. Your extended family, praise God for your extended family, because if there was no extended family, if you didn't have a mom and a dad and a grandma and a grandpa and a great-grandma and a great-grandpa, etc., you wouldn't exist. So all of us are indebted to our ancestry, yes? So praise God for the extended family that goes back. But if you grow up, the next thing you know, you become 16, then 17, then 18, you necessarily have to create a legitimate space between you and your family of origin, or it will wreck you. You have to, you love them, you're not mean, you're not rude, but you just create a legitimate space of autonomy. And then this becomes even more significant when you get married and start your own family. The immediate family has to be your priority now. Now I am a husband, married to a woman, she's my wife, and I have 3 children, Amber, Jason, and Leah. Ty, Sue, Amber, Jason, and Leah. Suddenly there's a new sacred circle, and my extended family does not have access at the level of decision making. I'm always open to what my dad, my mom, my auntie, my uncle, my brother's uncle's dog's friend. I'm always open to what anybody else has to say. But in the final analysis, the moment I am an adult individual with my own family, my immediate family is my priority. And if push comes to shove, I prefer, I choose, I prioritize my little flock, my little family unit over the dictates of the extended family. And we do this respectfully, of course. And sometimes to do it respectfully just means you do it silently and just let them watch you spread your wings and fly as they undergo whatever level of control freak, meltdown they're going to experience now that you've grown up and you've asserted your liberty. Just keep smiling. Say, I love you, Mom. And in your mind say, now get out of my way because I have a family and you're not going to dictate who I am or who we are. I prioritize the immediate family over the extended family. Marriage at this level of the experience that we undergo as human beings is a new relationship that in a sense is indebted to the extended family, but now that married couple in one another's eyes holds priority over everything that has come before. Now it's you and me, baby. We're moving forward. We make our own decisions. We need to figure out what we're going to do. As Taylor Swift would sing, this is our house, we'll do what we want. Okay, so then you have children. And once you have children, the first thing you think when you have children is, why did I do that? You're just like, oh, bummer. And the next thing you think is, I'm so glad we did that. They are a pain in the neck, and we love them. We love them. So then you have children, and then you understand that at the family level of society, loyalty and trust are absolutely vital. Constantly nurturing and building loyalty and trust. Loyalty and trust. One of the most encouraging things I ever saw was when one of my daughters was being spoken of in a negative way by some dude at college. And her older sister, my first daughter, so this is, the younger daughter, the older daughter, and this dude said something, and her older sister was just like, boom! Who do you think you are? Don't you ever talk to my sister like that again. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. That's how sisters ought to be. Because loyalty and trust need to be maintained. And now all these years have gone by, and they just adore one another because of loyalty and trust with one another. And then finally, the last idea, concept, principle under the family is that now that I have my own immediate family, my own wife or husband, and our children, given whatever the circumstances may be, and we've created our own little unit of loyalty and trust, now the goal as you now lead your family, guide your family, nurture your family, is to leave a legacy of first principles. Let me say it to you this way. A legacy of mercy and truth. The goal of raising children is to set them free, not to keep controlling them. The goal of raising children is to throw them on the resources of their own freedom as fast as possible. The goal of raising children is to give them a wider and wider range of tasks that they do so that they become responsible, self-governing adults that don't need to be told by their parents at the age of 32 that they need to brush their teeth, or anything else for that matter. The best thing to do in raising children is just to, as fast as possible, set them free. And it's also very convenient, because if you do that, like with our kids, we told all of them, listen, you're just 2-3 years old right now, but any minute now, we're not washing your clothes anymore. We're not drying them. We're not folding them. And by the time they were 5, they learned that this is how you open the washer door. You put them in. We know the buttons at 5 years of age. We know how much detergent. We know how to get them out. We know how to put them in the dryer. We know how to get them out of the dryer. We know how to fold them. We know how to put them away. Why would mom or dad have to do any of that for a 5-year-old? A 5-year-old is capable of that at least. By the time our children were 7, with little step stools, we would say to them sometimes, you guys make dinner. Let us know when it's ready. And they would, because they're very capable. The more responsibility you give them, the more they'll latch hold of it, the more they will be self-governing, responsible adults as fast as possible. Then we need to understand that the family is the foundational social unit of life. I'm not going to say a lot about this right now. I'm simply going to say that as followers of Jesus, we should be very pro-family. Our increasingly more and more secular Western culture is diminishing the importance of the family. You and I, even if I were a single guy and never married, as a follower of Jesus, I should be just applauding and rah-rahing on everybody who gets married and has children. I tell young adults all the time, what you need to do, if at all possible, there are factors you don't have control over, but if at all possible, you need to get married and make babies. This is what you're made for. Now, there are circumstances in which that's not the thing to do, and only, again, back at the individual level. Who alone can figure out whether or not that should be the case for you. You can only figure it out. I can't figure it out. I can tell you in general the idea that family is a good thing. But even if I get married and I choose not to have children, I should be there for my friends' children, and I should applaud the fact that they're having them. Because the family is the foundational social unit of society. And if the family disintegrates, society will completely implode on itself. So as followers of Jesus, we should be pro-family, pro-marriage, pro-family. Pro, man, woman, meet, fall in love, do the whole hanky-panky thing, have children. We're in favor of that. We like that idea as followers of Jesus. Then there's the church. The church is a living community that is an extension of the family. And you and I are wired in such a way that we need to live in community. And why do we need to live in community as opposed to isolation? Because living in community creates an environment in which I can continually learn and grow. Right? The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one human sharpens another human. This is going to sound so strange, I need people to disagree with me. I need people to say, I don't see it that way. Here's how I see it. And I need to be mature enough to handle that and say, whoa, your reasoning is actually more tight than mine. I'm going to change my perspective now because I listened to you. We should be able to change our perspectives. We should live in community in order to live lives of responsibility and accountability. You can't be a part of the church as a community and not be responsible to and accountable to that community. The concept of don't tell me what to do, I'll do whatever I jolly well please, is a contradiction of terms with regards to the extended family called the church. If the church has a standard, for example, and that standard is no bank robbery for us, we don't rob banks. We're against bank robbery. If somebody says, no, I kind of like the idea, and I'm going to rob a bank and I'll see you on Sabbath, happy Sabbath. Does the church have the responsibility to go to that brother or sister and say, hey, wait a minute, we don't agree with that. You're accountable to a larger moral standard than you yourself. And you can't be a part of this community and be a serial bank robber. Now, you robbed one bank, and we're going to forgive you. Make sure you pay tithe on that. You robbed one bank, we're going to forgive you. If you start turning this into a lifestyle practice, we're going to have to disfellowship your sorry butt. There's no way you can be a part of this church and be a bank robber. That's a very simplistic example of the fact that I'm accountable to people above myself. And then the church, the only way for a church to really, really succeed and grow is to prioritize the children. I've said this like a broken record for the entire history of Storyline, and we've done better and worse at it at different times, and we're starting to do really good at it now because we have key people in there who love children, right? But if you don't prioritize children, the church will die. Right now, all the statistics for American Christianity are telling us, there's a whole book written on it called Growing Young, and the whole book is about the fact that demographically, Christianity in America is growing old. There are fewer and fewer children and teenagers and young adults showing up. Next thing you know, the church will be fully geriatric, and there won't be any children, and the thing will die on the vine. Children have to be prioritized. If you have a choice, this is how important it is. If you have to choose between prioritizing the children and even having a preacher, choose prioritizing the children over the preacher. Let's say you have $1,000. Do we prioritize a children's program, or do we prioritize hiring some person to preach at us? Prioritize the children over the preaching, the thing that we tend to think, oh, we come to church because we're going to hear a sermon. No. We come to church as family units to prioritize our children and building mercy and truth into the fabric of their own minds and hearts. The children have to be prioritized, or our church will die. And then fulfill the gospel commission. That's the calling of the church. Which, by the way, prioritizing children is a part of the gospel commission, just for clarity here. The gospel commission is where Jesus said, go to all the world and preach the gospel. The church exists for that. So any local church should, and any local church member should expand their vision a little bit to say, okay, beyond this little gig that we're doing, are there things we can do to impact the rest of the world for Christ? Like our beloved Miranda runs the orphanage in Honduras, and we've given tens of thousands of dollars to those children in Honduras. She's met them all. We'll never meet them. But those children are a part of our extended family. We may never see their faces. Miranda just has to report to us about them. But Storyline has given higher quality of life and education and love to children in a country that's thousands of miles from here. So the gospel commission is bigger than ourselves. The church is the logical extension of the family. The family is vital, or society will implode. The church is vital, or the society will implode. Then there's the nation. Now I'm just going to make a few points about the nation here. The nation in which I hold citizenship is a secondary loyalty. Do you understand what I mean by that? I'm really happy that I'm an American because I've been all around the world and I can't think of anything I'd rather be. I've been everywhere. And we're very fortunate. So there's a legit pride to being an American. Like, I'm really happy to be an American. Are you? But it's a secondary loyalty, and what would be in the primary spot? Jesus, Jesus, Jesus all day long. And secondary to what? My family. If the government brings threat to my family, I do not concede to the government. I protect my what? My family. If the government tries to restrict the church, I choose the church over the government. So my national identity is it's a vital identity, but it's a secondary loyalty to God, family, and church. Do you guys see that? It makes sense, because if the government exercises authority over the individual, the family, the church, that is called totalitarianism, and it loops all the way back to erasing the capacity for individuality. Then I'm no longer an individual. I am just an extension of the state's political policies, and that comes to the second principle. Principles trump politics and parties. Now, it is really easy to be intellectually lazy on this point and to just say, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm the other thing. That's a political party, right? I'm going to suggest to you a wisdom way of thinking, a first principles way of thinking, is to say, I prioritize principles over politics and parties. So I may subscribe to a particular set of political policies, and I may subscribe even to a political party. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. I could say I'm a ... whatever it is. But if push comes to shove, I need to keep my eye on the principles, because my own party could abandon the principles that gave it life to begin with. So a political party can begin with a set of principles that I identify with and say, I agree with that set of principles. But over time, that party could compromise those principles and sell its soul to some other interests. So I never, ever prioritize the party over the principles. I'm a principle-oriented person. Are you? Say yes. You're a principle-oriented person. You make decisions based on what's right, not based on what any political party or political candidate dictates. And the principles fall into three broad categories according to the Constitution of the United States of America: liberty, justice, and equality for all. These are the principles. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all humans were created equal. You know the words. If you don't, you should memorize them. It's the foundation of your nation if you're an American, right? Liberty, justice, and equality for all. By the way, equality in this context is under attack too, with a new kind of thing called equity that's a little odd and different from what is meant by the founders of the nation by equality. I don't have time to explain that. Then, the fourth principle is civil discourse and the common good. By civil discourse, we mean something like the exchange of ideas vigorously, if necessary, but respectfully, not with enmity and malice, right? So I'm an American, you're an American, we're not going to play a zero-sum game with one another. We can disagree and then have dinner together. Because in the broader world around us, as Americans, we have a basic set of principles that define both of us, even though we disagree on some policy issue or some way of working out the application of a principle. Do you see the difference between those? So liberty, justice, and equality for all, which then we have civil discourse. That's not to say it can't be passionate or vigorous, but it shouldn't be demeaning, disrespectful, and it shouldn't cancel out somebody from me regarding you as my fellow American, right? And then to live in service to our fellow citizens. That's part of our national responsibility, I believe. Do you believe that? Do you believe if push comes to shove and your local community or your state or your nation begins to suffer, that you should step up and say, count me in, I'll help bring relief. Give me a job. I'll do whatever it takes for my nation. Now, this is really crucial. We come to the final point here. A nation is only as good and as strong as the families that compose it. We're teetering right on the edge. If you want to read something profound that will blow your mind, written in the 1960s, read Carl Jung, the great psychotherapist who was a believer in God and Jesus, by the way, as opposed to Sigmund Freud, his mentor, and they parted company over this. But if you read the first chapter of his book, The Self-Awareness, if you read the first chapter, he described back in the 1960s all the steps that would need to be taken to lead to the Western world plunging into a dictatorship. It's like a prophecy. He says, this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen, and gradually you will be divested of individual rights to the point that now the vacuum will be filled with a strong man who will become a totalitarian dictator. We're not immune to it. And it's vitally important to understand that our first loyalties, and then the world. Now, this is really in the important conclusion here. The nation that I'm a part of and that you're a part of, I think most everybody here, I'm an American. That's where my citizenship is held. That's where I was born. I'm an American. I'm happy to be an American. But if I have friends that also believe in Jesus in Germany, identity-wise, I'm closer to my German fellow believers, my Italian fellow believers, my Croatian fellow believers, my Nicaraguan fellow believers. My connection is closer with my fellow Christians worldwide than my nation. And if push comes to shove, I choose the church over national identity, right? This is vitally important on another level, and that is that the world is composed of one family, we believe, as followers of Jesus. And every single nation has its own national identity and interests. Is that legit? Yes. But while we have our own national identity and interests, we at the same time have a posture of peace and goodwill for all. Do we want all the nations of the world to prosper, yes or no? Yes, we want them all to be well. We don't want any country to be war-torn and ravaged by hunger and disease, right? So I'm an American, but I'm also a member of the human, what am I going to say? Race. I'm a part of the bigger thing called the world. So while my primary loyalty is as an American to America on the national level, that's my primary loyalty on that level. My far more primary loyalty, of course, is to my family and to my God. But my primary loyalty nationally is to America. But I long for the prosperity and health and well-being of all the nations of the earth. Don't you? Of course you do. That's the Christian way. When Jesus was born to this world, the angels sang from heaven, peace on earth and goodwill to humanity as a whole, right? And the world, at this level, I need to understand that God's kingdom transcends all nations. So the gospel commission doesn't have any borders, right? And the church has a global mission to take the gospel to the whole world. There's no border that the gospel can't cross. And if there is, we should do whatever we can to break down that barrier and to cross that border. We should even be honestly sneaky if we have to cross that border to take the gospel to people. We need to do whatever it takes. The world is composed of individuals and families that all want the same things and face the same challenges. Are you aware of that? Am I aware of that? I don't know. Sometimes I don't think I'm aware of that. Sometimes I think that the media gives me a picture of people that are the citizens of other nations, and I think I find myself looking down on them. Like they're fundamentally different than me in some ways. And then if I pan out, I say, oh, no, there's a mommy and a daddy and 2 children. And they want what I want for my family unit, right? And so our compassion needs to be broad. Our embrace of the world needs to be big. So the individual, the family, the church, the nation, the world. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. First principles. Mercy is the principle of outwardly applying grace to everybody else for their failures. And truth is me holding myself accountable to what I know to be right. Let mercy and truth, if you fail, my impulse needs to be forgiveness. If I fail, my impulse needs to be repentance. Do you see the difference there? I need to reside under my own forgiveness by the forgiveness of Jesus. But even if you never repent, I should have a posture toward you of mercy. And then bind them around your neck. Make them a part of your life. Integrate them into your life so that they apply everywhere. Write them on the tablet of your heart and so find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Mercy and truth. Living within the equilibrium, the balance of mercy and truth. That's the goal. These are first principles. Always be asking yourself. I'll always be asking myself, how does mercy apply in this situation? How does truth apply in this situation? Mercy and truth have met together according to Psalm 85, verse 10. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. This is a poetic way of saying that really mercy and truth, while they are distinct principles, are one principle. They're united. Like a man and a woman become a unit. They're 2, but they're 1. Mercy and truth are really one thing applied in 2 different directions given the circumstances, whatever they happen to be. And Jesus is the one who came into this world to personify that. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of 2 things, grace and truth. John's drawing from the scriptures we just read in the Old Testament. Mercy and truth kiss each other. They're a single unit. They're 2 principles in tandem. They're opposite sides of the same coin. And Jesus is the Word who came into this world not just to say things, but to live out the implications of grace and truth. The word is logos, as you probably know, and the word means something like the principles that undergird reality. The word, the logos, the one in whom are the principles that undergird reality. The principles that undergird reality were personified in Jesus. He is the one to whom we look, and in Jesus we see everything the way it ought to be. That's why I, as an individual, that's why you, as an individual, need to be centered out of myself, out of yourself, on Jesus. He's the one in whom you find everything the way everything ought to be. He's the Logos. He is the one in whom the 5 levels of life come together and make perfect sense. You are an individual in relationship to other individuals. You do have family units, extended or immediate. You are a part of a church. You are a part of a nation. You are a part of a world. I don't exist in isolation from others. You don't exist in isolation from others. The question always, every step of the way, is how do I apply mercy and truth in this situation? How do I live out the life of Jesus in relation to my fellow human beings? Father in heaven, thank you for your word. We have read that wisdom is the main thing. Wisdom is the principal thing, so that we should get wisdom with all of our gusto, with all of our getting, with all of our energy. I pray, Father, that each of us will find time alone in a room, alone out in the woods, alone on a long hike up a mountain, alone on a boat floating down the river, alone in a car in a parking lot. God, help us find some time alone to self-assess and to decide who we are as individuals so that we can have right relationships with our families, with our church, with our nation, with our world. In Jesus' name, amen.